Good evening, and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Movie Chat on Twitch. This is where I get online, chat about movies, goings on at Sonic Cinema, and take questions from people in the chat. And in the future, I'm going to be bringing guests on in the form of friends, filmmakers, and other critics to just talk cinema for an hour or so. My first outing was Monday, but because of the fact that it's still relatively new, I'm planning on doing some of the same discussion that I did on Monday, but overall this is still going to be pretty loose, still going to be pretty informal. I hope it's entertaining for you though, and I hope it's interesting enough for you to hit follow and keep coming back from week to week. For those of you who are not as familiar with me in Sonic Cinema, I wanted to do a brief introduction. I began writing about films by sending in mini reviews to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's You Be the Critic feature, and from 1997 to 2000 I would have over 60 published. Outside of that, I began to write longer reviews, and in 1999 I started a mailing list for friends and family that continues to this day. In 2004, Sonic Cinema went online, and it was intended as a home for not just my movie reviews, but fan commentaries that I'd done with friends and my music as well. In 2015, I retired the idea of fan commentaries and transitioned into doing the Sonic Cinema podcast, which can be heard on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, as well as the Sonic Cinema podcast YouTube channel, which is linked to on my Twitch page. Over the past few years, I've also been invited to record a critical commentary for a movie, joined the Georgia Film Critics Association, and have also covered various film festivals. And in the next few weeks, I will be covering the Atlanta Film Festival for the third year in a row. So, with all of these outlets, why move to streaming? One of the things I've wanted to do is promote positive film discussion and bring people who wish to do the same into the conversation. When I say positive film discussion, I don't mean just gush on about what we love about films, but film discussion that respects the filmmaking process and the choices made during it, whether they be good or bad, and comes from a single place, which is the love of film. As I begin to bring guests to the stream in the coming weeks, I hope that this will live up to those ideals. So, with the introduction out of the way, and this will be the last time I do it, we're going to go on with the episode. One thing that I want to do this time out is I want to share a video that I posted on the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel last Monday. And it's a video that I did, sort of a mission statement for Sonic Cinema and what I want Sonic Cinema to be as a home for film discussion. And I've already talked about it a little bit in terms of what I want in that introduction right there, but I want to still play the mission statement in its entirety, which is at the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Hit subscribe there, and you can check out more of my videos, quick takes, as well as the podcast. And I hope it gives you a window into sort of the perspective that I'm coming to, not just from here, but from not just as a critic, but as a lover of film in general. So I hope you enjoy this. Alright, that's going to... Well, we can... Hello, this is Brian Scuttle of Sonic Cinema, and I wanted to do this video to explain what I hope to offer you with not just my reviews and blogs at Sonic Cinema, but the sort of discussions on film and TV, I want to give my listeners and viewers on the Sonic Cinema podcast, as well as reviews that happen only at this YouTube channel, as well as any discussions on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other social media sites. My focus at Sonic Cinema since its inception has been to bring my perspective on the art of cinema and the entertainment value of movies to people who enjoy reading and discussing movies as much as I do. I'm not really interested in discussing the business of films, although if there's a topic I feel like I can bring my voice to in an interesting way in that area, as well as something that is worth mentioning within the discussion of a particular film, I will certainly address it. First and foremost, though, I just want to discuss the finished product. What works, what doesn't, and sometimes have a back and forth with friends, filmmakers, and colleagues that allows them to bring their voice into discussion, as well as readers and listeners who have comments on those discussions and reviews. Over the past couple of years, film festivals have become a big part of what Sonic Cinema has to offer in terms of coverage, and in the future that will continue, starting with next month's Atlanta Film Festival. And I hope to bring more unique films and filmmakers into discussion as I talk about their work in the context of film festivals. The most important thing for me when discussing movies, which I hope comes through however I'm discussing them, is that I respect film. The art of film, the entertainment afforded from the medium, the craft of filmmakers which goes into making them, and the sometimes arduous process from which films come. Does every film offer art or entertainment? No, they don't. But they all try, and I will always try to be respectful of that effort. There are some people discussing film nowadays whom I do not believe respect the blood, sweat, and tears of making them, or only see them as something that is solely to cater to their interests and don't really respect the opinions of others who feel differently. I've tried making my own films over the years and not really being successful, and I'd like to think that that's given me more appreciation for the art of making movies and the choices that filmmakers sometimes have to make and bring them to life. If you disagree with me on a film, I welcome a healthy debate on the matter. Ultimately, I don't just want the discussion Sonic Cinema provides to be just about my opinions or the opinions of people I have as guests on the podcast or providing their written voices on the website. I welcome comments on both the podcast and reviews and blogs, and so long as they're respectful and not derogatory towards others, I will leave them up. And sometimes I will engage with them as well. My goal with Sonic Cinema is not just to be an enlightening addition to the discussion of cinema, but a respectful and healthy one as well. That all being said, thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed what I've been able to provide with Sonic Cinema in the past, and I hope you enjoy what we have coming up in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was essentially my mission statement as a film critic, as a discusser, as somebody who discusses movies, as somebody who loves movies. And I felt like there's reasons that I decided to record that and write that I've talked about on the blog on Sonic Cinema. I posted it last week during the announcement of the stream right now, that you're watching right now. And it's one of these things where I think there's the negativity maybe in the minority when it comes to discussing film, but it's the loudest and it's the most pronounced. And I think that's problematic in and of itself, but I also think that a lot of that negativity doesn't really serve the discussion of movies in general. I think it's done to drive home specific vantage points, which, great cinema does allow for a point of view, a specific point of view, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you disagree with that point of view, that's fine, but that doesn't necessarily give you the right to just completely post dozens upon dozens of videos that I tend to think can be conspiratorial on the matter. And I think that's where the big problem lies. I think when the loudest voices in the room are the ones that are really muddying up the waters when it comes to film discussion, I think that's a problem, and most of what they're discussing has nothing to do with the content of the film in general, and that's the big problem. That's the big issue I see with things. And with that being said, though, I'm going to do some movie recommendations. Some of these you will have heard on Monday if you watch the episode on my stream on Monday. Some of these are going to be new, and all of these are well worth checking out. We're going to start out with the Oscar-nominated short, A Concerto is a Conversation, which is co-directed by Chris Bowers, a film composer and a jazz pianist who frames his ascent as his life as a composer whose work now is performed at Disney's Hollywood Concert Hall, with the life of his grandfather, who struggled to get a dry cleaning business up and running in the 1940s. And it's basically a conversation between the two of them. It's a beautiful short, is on the New York Times op-ed page. It is nominated for an Oscar. And I had the chance to talk to Chris Bowers the other night about the film, and it was really a wonderful discussion. I plan on releasing that to the public on Tuesday, and it was an enlightening discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's one that people are going to get something out of, and I certainly hope they get something out of it, not just from what he says, but the questions that I ask him and the things that I tell him about how his film affected me. And that's well worth checking out. My review of A Concerto is a Conversation is currently up on Sonic Cinema, and I will copy and paste the link in the chat here. The next film is one that I mentioned the other night. It is... wait a minute. Why is it? Let me... There we go. The next one that I want to point out is another one that I talked about the other night. It is Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. It is their latest animated film. It's currently available on their premium access on Disney Plus as well as in theaters if you're wanting to do that. And it reminded me a lot of Moana in the way that it tells the story of a young woman who is a guardian of the dragon gem with her father, and when the dragon gem gets broken and stolen, she has to go look for it. And it's a beautifully animated film. It's one of their best films of... I think it is one of their best films of the past decade or so. And like I said, it's well worth watching. The James Newton Howard score is really terrific in it, and the voice acting by people like Kelly Marie Tran and Awkwafina is really wonderful in it. So that is Raya and the Last Dragon. Next up is another one that I brought up the other night. It's called Underplayed. It's currently playing on Amazon Prime, and it's a documentary about female DJs and how the industry for DJs seems to that is a hard glass ceiling for talented female DJs to break through. And it's a really engaging documentary. It's got some terrific music. It's artists there that I've started to get into quite a bit, and it's something that I think is well worth watching. It's called, especially if you're a fan of music. It's Underplayed. It's currently on Amazon Prime, and I'll put that review in there as well. And the last one is one that I caught up with in the past month or so. It's Quo Vadis Ida. It is one of the nominees for Best Foreign International Feature at the Oscars this year, and is a tremendous film about the Bosnian and the issues of genocide and ethnic cleansing in the old Soviet countries of Bosnian and Serbian states, and it was just a powerful watch. It's well worth checking out. Is my top choice for best foreign film or best international feature right now, and it's well worth watching. So that is Quo Vadis Ida. And that's it as far as the movies that I kind of want to talk about right now. One of the things that I discussed the other day is what it's been like to, as a film critic, with all of the delays and all of the theater closures over the past year. And we're starting to get out of that, and Regal's starting to open back up. AMC's continued to stay open. Other theaters around the globe have been open. And it looks like Godzilla vs. Kong is going to be just what the box office ordered this weekend. I've not had a chance to watch that yet. I did do a MonsterVerse watch on Tuesday, and that was really fun to go back to those films, because it had been a few years since I had seen some of them. And, but I haven't had a chance to watch Godzilla vs. Kong yet. Chances are that'll happen at some point this weekend. And, that review will be up on Sonic Cinema when it does happen. So, when theaters closed, I actually still had a few reviews that I was working on in terms of getting done for screeners that I had gotten for releases at the time. And I finished those, I published those, and then I didn't really hear a lot. And there was a lot of uncertainty at that time. There was uncertainty about how art houses would do. There was an uncertainty about what movie theaters would look like. I always figured the major theater chains would figure out a way to make it work, even though in the month when we reopened back up for Tenet and New Mutants in August and September, needless, my longtime movie theater ended up shutting down permanently before Regal shut down for temporarily again. And that was jarring. That was a bit surreal. But I mean, I always figured that in the end, the major chains en masse would figure out ways to make it work through this time of uncertainty. And it seems like we're going to be getting out of that sooner rather than later. I'm disappointed that Black Widow was pushed back, but and that's pushed back my
time of going back to work right now. But at the same time, the past years provide an interesting insight into what the future of film distribution is going to be like. I think you're going to see. As much as I said when Warner Brothers announced their HBO Max theatrical release plan, that once things started to get back to normal to a certain extent, I kind of figured they might get away from the dual release. I don't know that that's going to be the case anymore. And I think the fact that they limit the streaming access to 31 days is smart. And I think that's the way that they played that, is they're ultimately going to be playing the long game with the theatrical window as much as they can, while giving that early access to people who are on HBO Max. And it was uncertain. I was glad to see art houses band together with places like Kino and Film Movement to work on virtual theaters, where the theater and the distribution company label essentially split the profits on virtual screenings. I thought that was a really innovative way of doing it. It was interesting to see the way Disney has approached it. I'm not sure that the premium access is really going to be effective for everything. And I think the way they're approaching which films get premium access versus which ones don't is kind of demoralizing, especially when you consider they're basically the last two, between Soul and this summer's Luca. They're basically just putting those on Disney Plus with no theatrical. Was understandable with Soul because of the way theaters were going at that point, but it's going to be disappointing with Luca not really having that option for theatrical. I do hope that they do give Soul a theatrical release, because I think that would be really beneficial to it. But it was nice because it was, the furlough happened at a time where I was really starting to get screener access from Neon, from IFC Films, from Topic streaming service, which just debuted last year, and it gave me a steady stream of content. I wasn't just writing about older films. I wasn't just writing about movies that I wanted to write about. I was able to write about content that is coming out in the in real time, and I was able. And the way that Neon and IFC came into the equation by having a window of video on demand as well as theatrical drive-in screenings, coupled with a streaming window on something like, say, Hulu for Neon. I think that was really smart, and it was really very forward thinking of them to be able to give that access to people who wanted to see their movies. And they both came out with some tremendous movies over the year, and it was really wonderful to be able to see what their slate was on real time. And there were other independent films that I got a chance to watch, and it was really exciting to be able to do that, to be able to have that content on a regular basis, and be able to approach things like I normally would if theaters were open. And when Fantasia Fest opened up as a possibility, that was a big boom to be able to cover a film festival in Canada, albeit with very few screenings that I could go to. Everything was screeners, but at the same time, it was really entertaining to be able to cover that film festival as aggressively as I was.
and I got a lot of great content, and it was, last year was a big year for Sonic Cinema in general, and I think this year, me being able to cover the Sundance Film Festival this year, being able to cover the Atlanta Film Festival again this year, my third year in a row, I think these type of things are really helping with Sonic Cinema, and it's really giving me a lot of stimulating access to films that I would be waiting for like everybody else normally, and being able to, because of the fact that they've been all virtual for the most part, having access to like Fantasia Fest and Sundance were tremendous, and those were a lot of fun to cover, even though Sundance was, both of them were completely exhausting and they were both virtual only. I am looking forward to the Atlanta Film Festival, though. I love the hybrid drive-in screening and virtual format they're doing this year, and I do hope they continue with the drive-in format at the Plaza, even as movies get back to normal, because I have loved going there, and I'm really glad to see the Plaza thrive the way they have in the past year with the drive-in, with and then being able to open up their indoor screening house. It's been a lot of fun to see stuff like The Good Fistful of Dollars, Evil Dead 2, Spider-Man Into Spider-Verse, John Lewis's Good Trouble, which I got a chance to see at the Dad's Garage drive-in area last year, and it was wonderful to be able to experience that, and even in spite of everything going on, I'm really looking forward to the Atlanta Film Festival, and I'll have more about that in a couple of weeks. So, one of the main things that I wanted to talk about tonight has to do with a double feature that I ended up doing last night. And I'll go into the reasons why, but it's actually part of a blog post that I just posted right before we went online with the stream. I'll post the link for that here. And it's called Cinematic Reboot. And what I mean by reboot in this particular case, I mean, you know what reboots typically are in movies. They're, remakes, or kind of remakes of older films that bring them to a newer generation and try to tap into the nostalgia of the older audience. When I talk about reboots in this case, I'm essentially talking about films that give us a recharge in our mind, sometimes in our soul, sometimes in our ability to function on a day-to-day business. And I think that's an important thing to be able to do at times. And it was what made me think about this was one of the films that I did last night, one of the films that I watched last night was Richard Linklater's Waking Life. And I was watching that because of the fact that I'm actually going to be recording an episode of the Film for Thought podcast with Amy Smith, who I know from Twitter, on Sunday, where we're going to be talking about that movie. And it's one of my very favorite movies of all time. It's an animated film. It was done by rotoscoping animation over live action film, and it's basically a series of intellectual philosophical vignettes with a specific character played by Wiley Wiggins, who was a longtime collaborator of Linklater's, and he's essentially a dreamer, and he can't wake up. And This is a movie that I've always kind of felt like it's an important movie for me to watch, and it's one that I think of all of the films I've watched over the years, it is the film that I go to most if I feel like I need a recharge, intellectually speaking, spiritually speaking, emotionally speaking. I think that's an important thing to be able to do over the years, and I think that's, and I talk about in the blog several instances where I was able to do that because of certain films. And one of the other examples I talk about is last year, the beginning of last year. If you know me personally, you know that I had a lot of stress going on familially wise, in terms of my family, in terms of my mother, and it was really wearing me out. And that, coupled with the work schedule I was working at that point, it was really stressful to go through that. And it was actually a couple of different screenings of movies. One was via screener, was Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life, and Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory. And those movies really helped me get through the emotions that I was going through, get through this stress that I was going through, because it helped me reflect on what I was going through in my personal life with what's going on screen, and seeing the way the characters react in their particular situations, the way the actors perform their roles. And that was something that I really needed in both of those cases. And it's something that I tend to get time and time again with Waking Life. And I mean, not all of the vignettes work for me in that particular movie. There are some that are more interesting than others. But for the most part, what that movie does, intellectually speaking, it really inspires me to sit down and just process it, and really process what I'm going through in regards to what the movie is doing. And that's something that cannot be overstated in how important it can be to do that as an individual. And so when... And the other movie I actually did a double feature of Waking Life and Errol Morris's Vernon, Florida, which I absolutely love. It's probably my favorite film of Morris's. And that one, if you haven't seen it, it's wonderful. It is basically about this one town, this one light road town in Florida. And it's just Errol Morris talking to, just putting the camera towards these people and just letting them talk. And watching the two movies back to back, it was really striking. I originally picked Vernon, Florida because of the fact that I hadn't seen it in a few years, and because of the fact that I really loved it. It's a wonderful film, but watching it back and back with Waking Life, there's some similarities in the way that Errol Morris presents the town of Vernon, Florida, that remind me of the way Linklater goes through what he's conveying with Waking Life. Because Errol Morris is basically, he's telling... It's hard to say that he's necessarily telling the story of Vernon, Florida, when in fact he's just letting the characters, the individuals in Vernon, Florida, talk about themselves. And that's one of the most interesting aspects of it. And it's one of those things that I just really responded to. And it's something that I just really loved about the film. And seeing it in conjunction with Waking Life last night, seeing that connection
between those two, I mean, I would say spiritually and intellectually, I think Gates of Heaven, which is Morris's first film, is probably more of a spiritual, is probably closer to what Linklater's going for in Waking Life, but the fact that Errol Morris just basically goes around the town and he's not really telling a linear story, he's just letting these people talk. And it's fascinating to hear them talk. And it's a wonderful film. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's actually a double disc in the Criterion Collection with Gates of Heaven. So it's well worth purchasing, even on a blind buy, to own those two wonderful movies. But that's, this idea of movies that inspire us and get us to think about what we're going through in our lives, what we're experiencing in our lives. It's one of those things that really it got me thinking, and it doesn't have to be a movie as serious as Waking Life or Pain and Glory or In Life or Vernon, Florida. Hell, in 1997, I was at the point where I wasn't necessarily sure that I could really enjoy movies at that point. This was right as I was trying to write about them. And then I saw Con Air and Face Off in the same month, and I love those two movies, and so I felt like, okay, it's just a lull. It's not necessarily... It's more on the kind of what movies I've been seeing as opposed to myself being able to watch movies and continue to engage with movies in that way. And, so in neither of those... Face Off, I did an entire podcast on Face Off, but, Con Air is completely... it's one of the silliest damn movies Jerry Bruckheimer's ever made. And I love it. It's a wonderful film, but it's also completely ridiculous. So, it was something I needed to see because of the fact that it's something that really engaged me, something that really entertained me. But most of the time, as I've gotten older, I have grown more towards more serious movies, more artistic movies. And, the fact that it happened last year with Pain and Glory and A Hidden Life was remarkable because of the fact that with A Hidden Life, I've been very, very touch and go on Malick as a filmmaker. I haven't really been somebody who was overly engaged by his work. But A Hidden Life just completely engaged me, enthralled me, and connected with me in a very emotional way. And then you have Pain and Glory, which I've loved a lot of Almodovar over the years, but I don't know that there was one like that just landed with me and connected with me in the way that I needed that one connected with me on. And it was wonderful to be able to experience that one, and I needed it. I needed it at the time, and I didn't necessarily, need Waking Life to have that impact with me last night, because I was watching it for the purpose of preparing for a podcast. But all of those feelings that I get every time I watch Waking Life, which, like A Hidden Life, I hope both of those get picked up by Criterion and released at some point because they're both completely worth it. But, I didn't need that experience out of Waking Life, but it was funny how much that experience still happened with me last night watching it in conjunction with Vernon, Florida. And so that's what the blog on Sonic Cinema is about. It's called Cinematic Reboot. It's in the link on the chat, and it's on the front page of sonic-cinema.com. And I hope you
I hope you read it. I hope it inspires you to think about what movies you might turn to if you need an emotional reboot, a psychological reboot, if you know, which is kind of different from comfort movies. I mean, I have comfort movies too. I have movies that have impacted me personally in ways that can't really be easily discussed. But I've had those movies, but it's hard to consider something like Waking Life a comfort movie. It's more of a movie that I do watch for a sort of blast of inspiration, I guess, is the best way to put it. And I want to encourage you to think about what movies may do that with you. And feel free to comment on the blog on Sonic Cinema with some of your choices, and I welcome those choices. That's it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema Movie Chat. I will be back on Monday, April 5th, with my first guest. It's a longtime friend and filmmaker that I've gotten to know over the years, Chris Esper. And I'm really looking forward to that discussion. It's been a couple of years since I've really talked to him. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. I'm also going to continue doing some chats on Thursday as well. And I already have an interesting idea for what I want to chat about on Thursday. But I will leave that to the imagination for now. And for now, this is Brian Scuttle. Thank you very much for watching the Sonic Cinema Movie Chat. Follow me here on Twitch, as well as Apple, Google, Spotify, however you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter. I'm very active there. Follow the Sonic Cinema webpage, Facebook page, where I post the links to all the reviews and blogs that get posted. And thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a good evening.